Um, okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of Community Impact. I am Emily, the host today, and I am joined by Jennifer Whitaker and Sarah Goodell. How is everybody today?
Fabulous. How are you, Emily?
I am good.
I'm good too. Looking forward to this.
So I guess maybe we can maybe start off with about your thoughts on how you want to make an impact in your community or anything along those lines.
Okay, so let's start with Sarah. Where do you see, you know how we were talking about your different trades? Okay, I think is graphic design was one, right? And web development or web design, you may call it.
Yes.
Um, what about some others, like what you may do any videography, like video editing, podcast editing? Would you go through what you do and then basically how can these help the community, whether it's the customer end or it's other businesses? And like if businesses, what size are your ideal people that you would like to help?
Okay. My name is Sarah Goodell. I am the otter. I can talk. Yeah, I really can. I promise you that. I am the CEO and founder of Autumn Dahlia Creative Services, and as that name implies, we are a creative services business. That means that I cover all of everything creative from branding and editorial design to package design and everything in between. So, if you need an app, if you need video editing, if you need motion graphics, I do all of that. I'm literally a one stop shop for both B2B and small businesses. My primary audience at the moment is authors, editors, and coaches and people working in the transformational realm.
I didn't hear the third one. Authors, editors, what?
And coaches. I work primarily
Coaches.
with authors, editors, and coaches. But I'm open to working with all small businesses as well as large businesses alike.
Okay. And so let's go through what are some of these ways, because it sounds like your branding, maybe I could just call it that, your whole branding idea are in different avenues. So let's go through a list of what are some of them that are ideas we can throw out for those that aren't familiar with that term, that are maybe the ones I named, maybe more that you have to add to that are examples of how you can help these other authors, coaches, business owners, both large and small size.
Sure. One of the main things that I do is logos. A lot of people assume that when they put together a logo, that is their brand. There is a lot more to branding than just one's logo. You want to stay consistent, you want to stay concise, and you want people to recognize and remember you. That is the most important thing, standing out and letting them recognize and remember you. So, one of the main things I do is I walk through with my clients exactly what type of style they want to portray, what type of business and what their target audience is, as well as some of their competitors. So, we can look at what kinds of things their competitors are doing as well. So, that's one of the ways that I help both large and small businesses set themselves apart from the competition.
It sounds to me like you're saying the logo in its consistency is one of the most important parts of branding, if not any other method of marketing.
Absolutely. Your logo is going to be basically the face of your brand. So if you don't have a logo that stands out, if you don't have a logo that isn't a cookie cutter, a lot of people are using services like PicMonkey and Canva to create their logos, and I very much advise against that because there are templates and people are using those templates each and every day. You think of the hundreds of thousands of people that are logging onto that program and creating that exact same template, you end up with cookie cutter logos and they all look the same.
Yeah, and even if they were different, I know with like Canvas or Canva, whatever they call it, that you could say it's your version because let's say this this mask behind me. See above my door?
Mhm.
What if that was the logo, but mine is pink and black and yours is blue and red?
Exactly. That it still creates kind of a cookie cutter dynamic and doesn't allow you to stand out from your competition. Say, with your authorship, for example, there were 5 other people that had the same cover idea. And just because they changed 80% of it, they would say, okay, that makes it mine, that makes it unique. And in reality, it just allows them to kind of blend in to the sea of people who are trying to get their names out there.
I could
One,
see that.
one
Because
of
I
the things
think
that
as an author, and I feel like you would, I want to ask, but I feel like you would say similar with me as an author in my book covers, because that is my main like marketing tactic when it comes to somebody buying my book, whether it's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, or wherever that, that I use as an author, that these different channels that may be my presence on the web or actually in stores, that I'm hoping to do soon. I was supposed to do the one book today, or this month, but it's going to rain into next month. But anyways, whatever is that cover, with it being however many hundreds or thousands of places, I want them to recognize my name, and I want it to be exactly the same. Like you see on here on the video, I have Jennifer A. Whitaker, even though Emily never says my A. But there's another author that is Jennifer Whitaker, but if they didn't know about Jennifer A. Whitaker, like every detail and being consistent, they'd go to some other book.
exactly, and that's what often
And
happen, especially
yeah,
in the writing world.
right. And because Jennifer's a popular name, even if you don't know if Whitaker is, because maybe you haven't met another Whitaker. But certain names we all know, like Smith, we all know is a common last name. So Jessica Smith would be very easy to find, how many thousands or hundreds. And so I see an example as that, to be consistent, but also unique in the way that I labeled my A, my middle initial. And then I see you saying similar with my book cover, between it being my name part that I'm talking about, or the actual cover that's the graphic image and the like title being unique. That's my own lingo and isn't just something that a lot of other authors have used. I hear you saying that about those, because if somebody doesn't ever find my website, they're more than likely, with my kind of field as being an author, going to find my book cover that's a picture of where it presents itself on somebody else's store or website.
Absolutely. That's going to be essentially, those covers become a part of your brand.
And would you say that my portfolio picture, which is this one of me like in a professional dress with a trademark, which is my headband I always wear with this hairbrush to the side, would you see that as being part of my branding as well, since I use that same exact picture with me in a professional outfit, but also this same trademark with my headband that everybody knows me on TV and other places where you can see me, like on podcasts or visual like this and all. I always
Yes,
have that.
absolutely. Those things are key to making sure that your brand stays consistent and that people can recognize you across platforms.
So those are as an author examples. So as a business in general, I hear you saying the logo is the most important. But what about other things related to our website and marketing tactic, like the name being catchy or easy to remember?
All those things, especially with websites, with the domain name, for example, which is the name that you type into the address bar.
Right, sometimes called URL, right?
Yes, if you have your URL that is longer, people aren't generally going to want to take the time to type that in. In the marketing world, we say that we have 13 to 15 seconds to hook someone's attention. And generally, they look for easy to type in domain names that are something that they can remember easily, one of the things that I recommend to a lot of my clients is to not only secure the .com domain URL, but also any domain that you think would be potentially something that someone might mistype, like .org, or another popular one in my field right now is .design. So
Okay.
I recommend to a lot of my clients to make sure that you've secured, if you can afford to do so, multiple URLs um, with that same domain name, so that if someone accidentally types in, let's say, your URL .org instead of .com, they're going to be directed to your website.
Which means you're saying we also need not just to buy those domains, they're similar, but to have somebody such as you do forwarding, website forwarding or domain forwarding. What's the right word for what I'm talking about?
It's called a DNS forward, and that's what you would have someone like me do, set everything up to ensure that that happens.
And I asked that because what I know that you and I would both want to make clear to our listeners is that if they buy the domain, but you, Miss Sarah, don't set up to forward to whichever one is their hosting that actually has their website, it shows like a error or some other page that
Yes.
is not what they're actually intending as far as what the website visitor or traffic to see. Um, so what you're communicating, that's a big piece to deliver. What you're saying is the purpose of having these similar domains.
Especially in the marketplace now, with everybody going virtual. A couple of years ago, it wasn't so much of an issue because we had people that were brick and mortar stores, people that had storefronts and everything. But now, with everyone kind of converging into the virtual space, it's even more important nowadays to set yourself apart.
And I'd like to say, while you're on that specific point, what you were talking about, and I'm trying to make this aware to the audience. I'm pretty sure you already know, Miss Sarah, but we all know there was the .com boom or bang, wherever they called it in 2000. That's where there's a big, huge publication and publishing and purchasing of all these different .com websites when the internet first became a big place for businesses, and it's
Yes.
been growing since then. So it's already been for at least 2 decades that most, if not all, businesses get more of their traffic from the internet than anything old school, like handing out business cards or being in the yellow pages and stuff like that.
Yes.
But what I see that's the key in what you're pointing out is that since the pandemic has started in February of 2020, we have less of brick and mortar. So the marketing that comes from that McDonald's sign that's in front of their building is what we're losing, which is why what we're keeping, which is our internet presence, is so much more vitally important. Especially, I hear you saying, for businesses that are home-based, like mine. I mostly work out of my home or a Starbucks, but I don't have a storefront with my books. I have a website with it. It's where my fans can buy books directly from me.
Mm-hmm.
If they want it with my autograph, then they can buy it directly from me, versus they can go to my website and buy it from an Amazon link if they want it standard as far as not having my autograph or whatever. So with stuff like that, I see that my internet presence would be more important, or any other that's only internet based, versus any that may, since the pandemic, still have a brick and mortar presence after the pandemics, and so many more jobs, like talking in job opportunities. So many more jobs are now home based that before the pandemic you had to do from some kind of building, whether it was a retail store or it was a professional office or something like that. So more businesses are going virtual and the jobs are going virtual, which means there's less businesses in actual buildings. So their internet presence is getting to be their only presence as opposed to having those storefronts and retail signs and all that.
That is exactly right. A lot of people don't realize that with the convergence of so many people in the virtual space now, that their online presence is just as important as, say, their resume, or um, a lot of people, do video resumes now. They don't put as much importance on their online presence as they should, and especially for someone such as yourself in an authorship position, or having just that virtual presence, it's extremely important to maintain that consistency.
And I hear you also saying, when you're talking about specifically authors, because it's very common for authors to be home based. We may go places like, how I go to Starbucks to do my work, to get my inspirations of what I see and hear and so forth. There are different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Or to be in a social environment so I can interact with people like I do here with you and other people on World of Ability podcast. But what I hear is that it's not solely authors, because a lot more people, like coaches, in order to have a bigger geographic audience, they're going more Zoom, Google Meet, and other video based,
Mm-hmm.
which means they're also what could be solopreneurs or entrepreneurs or professionals that have to do their own marketing for other reasons, like contract, whatever. That's why they have to bring their own clients as opposed to being employed. But they're home based, or they are like me, on the move with other places, but still that they don't have an office. So their internet presence is even more important now, like the search engine optimization to be easier to find, you may say, right?
That is an extremely important part.
Directory listing. I don't know if that's the same or different with SEO.
And well, it goes hand in hand with SEO. Google profile, Google listing goes in hand in hand with SEO.
So does it fall under SEO, or is it just that you need both? What are you saying?
They're considered separate, but they do go hand in hand. They really do work together.
So you would agree that we vitally need both of those to get our
don't even realize what their Google profile is. They're like, oh, I'm on Google, so I have a Google profile. No, that's not.
That is not true. I agree with you.
Right. They don't understand that those are two separate things, and that they actually do work together to help them to maintain that consistency and grow their audience.
Well, because, for example, what you're talking about, where when you get listed, like let's say that you get a new domain and your hosting company submits it to different listings like Google, Bing, Yahoo, whatever, right? That they do not create you a profile on Google My Business, which is what you're talking about as far as directory citation, at least in terms of Google Maps.
Correct.
And at the same time, if they are home-based, my understanding, which I want to know from you if this is true, is that any of us, whether it's mine or somebody else's, if it's home-based, you cannot put your actual address in Google My Business, but you can list yourself as a local business with only the second line of an address, which is a city, state, and zip code, assuming in the U.S.
That is correct. My recommendation for those that are home-based and maybe don't want to give out that information is to look into a virtual office. There are several companies out there that provide co-working services or co-working spaces for individuals to use as a business address. My personal favorite one is a service called iPostal One. And if you go to their website and you put in the city where you would like to, say that your business is, you'll find several businesses that are offering mailboxes to be able to get your business mail for you and have a forward-facing business address instead of having your home address listed somewhere.
So it'd be mail forwarding, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
But it's not an actual office, kind of virtual office idea.
Exactly. You pay, like, for example, my forward facing office address actually belongs to my local Staples. And they have post
So is it
office.
similar to a PO box? Because some places like Google My
Not a
Business, I
PO
thought
box.
does not.
That's what's nice about it, is it's not a PO box, but it acts like one. So you get an actual street address to be able to put in things like your Google My Business address, and you don't have to divulge your home address that way.
Then would you share in the chat of our podcast right now and then read aloud again what are those two websites where people can find a virtual address, which is, we repeat, the type they forge your mail, but is not an actual office, which is not to be confused with places like Regis that I work with, where you pay a fee for each day to actually use an office that belongs to somebody else. But that this is where you basically only get forwarding mail and you are not getting an actual office.
Right. You can use, they have different packages on iPostal One, for example, and there's several other companies that do it as well, but that's my personal favorite just because that's the one that I find the most convenient. But they have different packages. You can do it for personal, you can do it for business, or you can do what they call the virtual office package, which actually gives you a VoIP telephone number to use, as well as a fax number and the virtual office address.
And then what was the other place where you said that you get it? Was it Office Staple or something like that?
Staples is another one that offers it, as well as a lot of U.S. United Postal Service companies. They also offer virtual offices as well.
So like UPS, I heard you say United Postal Services. My understanding, since I'm the owner of one specific location in my area, is that those are the same as mailboxes. So do they not have issues as far as like Google My Business and other things with being a PO box idea?
No, the Brown Store boxes or the Brown Store mailboxes, they actually give you a street address, so that negates the PO box. The only problem with PO boxes is that you have to put that PO beforehand, and a lot of algorithms dislike it. So
Well,
that's
what
why.
about with UPS? That's what I was asking, United Postal Services, because my understanding is I'd be using his address with some kind of box number. But what is the truth about that? And then
It
how does that
counts as a
go?
street address, so it's not considered a PO box.
So I'm taking his address. What, I put suite number or something to specify?
Yeah, you would put suite number or box number.
Okay. So if somebody mails, let's say my client, she wants one of my books. She mails it to me and I have one at this UPS whose owner I know. I put suite number or even box number on my Google My Business listing. How will it work as far as Google approving my business to be listed versus Google looking there and taking a picture and realizing, because they have pictures of different businesses.
Google is completely fine
That,
using a virtual office address as long as it's not a PO box.
But since if it's box number versus suite number for UPS, would that make a difference as far as Google My Business and knowing that my business, yes, it is a mailbox, but I can actually be listed as being located, in this case, in Katy, the next city over?
No, there's no difference. As far as SEO is concerned, all it does is see it as a street address.
And Google wouldn't, like, let's say Google My Business, it wouldn't find it suspicious that there's 50 different places, there are different businesses with the same one.
It's popular now that so many people are doing that,
and
services are offering it, that I've never seen it be a problem.
Okay, so in your experience, in your profession, at least with UPS, the iPostal one, and that's the literal number one, .com. Did you say Staples?
Yeah, Staples offers it.
Okay.
Like I said, the UPS store. There are several businesses that offer virtual addresses now. Many of the like for those of us that have LLCs, many of the registered agents for LLC providers also provide a virtual address if you choose to opt into that service as well.
Now, what if, say, a small business like mine? Because I'm very open about the fact that I'm disabled, so I'm also on disability, which means you could have a general idea of how small my kind of income is. Otherwise, they wouldn't consider me disabled. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, what kind of rate do you see that a business as small as mine would be paying to see if it's for, let's say, in my case, UPS, because that's the one whose owner I know and I trust the most. What do you see would be my kind of cost if I wanted to use Mr. Alfonso's store, his UPS, as my address and to be on Google My Business?
Typically, the virtual office addresses run anywhere from $15 to $30 a month. So
Okay.
it's not very much at all in terms of providing an address for you as well as providing that kind of layer of safety. Because I know that especially in the world of authors and writers, there can be some super fans and they might, want to look up your personal address, and that's kind of a layer of protection against that as well.
It's a security advice you're giving us, right?
For sure.
Okay. So, like with me, um, if I want to do it and I want it to be just solely for address and mail forwarding, would I be closer to 15, or is that 15 to 30 based on like the minimum subscription or whatever you call it, but uh, the geographic area making a difference in how
The
high or low the rate could be?
it does actually have an effect on how much it is. I know
Mhm.
if I wanted a virtual address in Detroit, for example, which is about an hour and a half south of me, if I wanted one in a larger city like that, I would pay a little bit more. But that 15 to 30 varies based on the services that you get, as well as, like say if you wanted a virtual phone number as well as the virtual address.
So, like, Texas is one of the most affordable states. Unlike California and Hawaii, they're the two highest cost of living states. So, you could see Texas, with what I just explained, being closer to 15 if all I wanted was a forwarding address to put myself on, or my business, technically, not myself independently, on Google My Business, but to
Yes.
not do anything besides receive emails. I mean, not emails, receive mail forwarding, and to use that as a virtual office, you call it, or in other words, a remote address for mailing purposes. To put myself as being located, in this case, if I'd show as being located in Katy instead of Brookshire, because I'd use that specific store's address. But you don't see that being a problem, and you don't see that being like too costly for small businesses.
Not at all, especially because, like I said, in the world of coaching and in the world of authors and writers, there are people that can get a little bit too attached to characters or to authors, and I feel that especially for the client base that I work with, virtual offices are a lot safer than, say, having your home address attached to your business.
Okay, then let's go to another thing you had earlier spoke about. We were talking about the web presence, SEO, directory citation, or sometimes they call it directory listing.
Mhm.
Where's my thought? Oh, I get it. Okay, so looking at my name, I thought domains. Okay, part of SEO is not just your domain being, or URL, we sometimes call it, being listed, that your host may do for you after you buy it, but search engine optimization, which is where you could tell us, Sarah, that you do articles and other things to help where somebody could look me up by my name, like Jennifer A. Whitaker, or by my business, Jen's Books and More, or my exact domain, but that my domain being added to search engines, I'm only able to be found by somebody looking up my full exact web address instead of my name or anything else.
Unfortunately, that's one of the drawbacks of having a virtual web presence, is that there are ways to tie all of your websites together, but it can also become costly and sometimes daunting to do that, especially if someone has a large web presence. If they have, multiple locations that they want to tie all together, and have someone go and search for a specific location, that can also, it can become costly. But SEO is definitely something that I think a lot of people don't put as much investment um, or importance on as they should, because, like, for example, a website that could potentially rank, first or second page on Google with the right SEO and keywords and backlinks and articles and such, may at the moment with no SEO be ranking number 46 instead.
Or even on a totally different page, like for page 46, instead of just item 46, if they don't have any SEO, especially if they're a new business that hasn't been around for long, right?
Yes, ma'am. If they're like brand new on the web and they just have a few things up there, then chances are they're going to rank a whole lot further in terms of the Google search than they would if they had the proper SEO and everything.
Okay, so here's another question. Let's say, since I have my domain, my long one is Books and More by Jennifer A. Whitaker. Since part of my domain is my name, Jennifer A. Whitaker, then when my websites show up, if they searched my name, including my middle initial, because of this whole fact that my name is part of my full domain, even though I have a short one called Jen's Books and More that's easier for people to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So would that domain having my name, the full extent, help with SEO of people looking me up by my name and finding my website?
Depending on the person doing your SEO. If they're choosing just to do very basic things, chances are that they wouldn't tie that together. If you have someone who
Was that would or would not?
Would probably not have someone that would tie that together. But
okay,
if you have someone who's familiar with your situation and knows that you have a longer URL that is the longer version, for example, then you could speak to your web tech about, tying all of those together and making sure that those web presence are tied to you and everything that you're doing.
What if I wanted him or her to do them as separate keywords, like Books and More, which is a very common search, or very commonly named when somebody posts and they say, and we have Books and More on whatever's their post, even though they're not talking about my business. What if I had somebody do SEO for that phrase, Books and More, as well as separate SEO for my name, Jennifer A. Whitaker? How would that do in finding my domain? That's those two combined.com.
Depending on how there's SEO rankings and SEO
competition.
Kind of. I'm trying to think of a way to explain it without going too far into tech land and getting the
right.
lost. But there's different ways to do that, and if people are interested in doing something like that to take advantage of the fact that those are very common terms, that's definitely something that a skilled tech could do for you.
Okay, so I hear that you could do that if somebody wanted your services, that you know enough that you could be the one
Yes.
in something that's very commonly searched, and probably is high competition, that you could bring results with it and do an SEO over, let's say it would take 6 to 8 months or maybe 9 months before they'd actually see results. But you are confident that you have whatever skills and background.
I am very confident in my
Results.
skills, not to toot my own horn or to sound cocky at all, but
No, go ahead, say it.
extremely confident in my skills to be able to show my clients results. I actually have both written and video testimonials from most of my clients that have given me them, that I've asked for them, that have seen extreme results from the services that I've been able to provide for them. I have one client who was working with me for about 6 weeks total, and she saw at least a 50% engagement increase. So.
And by engagement, we mean like website visits and or purchases of whatever product or service, phone calls,
Yes,
all
her
those.
sales went basically through the roof during that 6 weeks.
Okay. So, where do you see your range of price? Because let's say you got a small business like me that maybe I can only do 1 hour a month or 1 hour a week of SEO, but I know that SEO and citation are very important based off our conversation. And it would take longer to show results than a Google ad, AdWord.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that the SEO and citation would take longer, but I could go at a set rate. Where would you see your range of like a minimal where let's say you did only citation and SEO versus a bigger package that's for a bigger company or one with a bigger load that also is able to afford?
I typically will do custom packages for small businesses because I know that they are, probably more than likely on a smaller budget. My rates start at 500 and go up from there.
Okay.
For someone who, like, such as yourself, who is a solar entrepreneur, along with everything that you do with your authoring and everything, I typically will work out a custom rate for someone such as yourself versus a larger corporation.
Okay, so like with corporate, you would have some standard options because generally they can afford the full package of whatever size.
That I will offer someone that I like a CEO that has a budget to handle that. I have packages that I offer not only for creating those SEO services, but also for maintaining them. And they are on a higher package spectrum than, say, just your average small business. I tend to really customize my packages so that my clients get the best out of them that they can.
Yes, and I want to highlight that this is what's considered affordable for most, if not all, small businesses because, as far as your services, Miss Sarah Goodell, that's the name everybody needs to know.
I appreciate
And I want to highlight that because what you may know, being in your field and dealing with so many small businesses, whether they're solopreneurs or they're entrepreneurs, I'm sure you're very familiar with something like 70 or 80% of all employers are small businesses.
Yes.
At least in the United States and the date that I last researched.
Absolutely. That's why I tend to customize my packages so that they can get the best out of their budget and I can still provide them that service.
Right, because they are a majority of our population. Even though they may be on the small end of funding and affordability, they're on the bigger spectrum and end of our general business population.
Absolutely. I would much rather support a small business. I mean, there's opportunities in the agency realm for the type of work that I do to, work with multi-million-dollar corporations. But I would much rather support small businesses that are doing their part to make sure that their hometown people are taken care of versus, giving my expertise to that conglomerate.
And I kind of feel like, I don't hear you directly saying this, but I feel like you're saying because you're more passionate of helping those that you can impact and make a bigger difference in than those that you may be just one out of so many millions of people that are contractors or employees.
Yes, ma'am. I am very much, my heart is definitely in service, and I would rather um, service those small businesses and make sure that they are getting the best bang for their buck, if you will, versus spending so much on social media ads or on Google ads and not seeing a return on their investment.
That's good. That's what our audience needs to hear, because whether they're desiring or inspiring entrepreneurs, or they're current entrepreneurs like myself, even solopreneurs, maybe even decision makers within different businesses that could pull a string a bit. That I hear you, Sarah Goodell, saying that you're the resource for all these different listeners. Because even if it's something like the ipostal1.com that you recommended, you have other resources that you can provide beyond just your own service that can help with like a package deal, even if the financial end is only paying you for your actual labor.
I am partnered with virtual assistants. I'm partnered with coders. I'm partnered with all kinds of people in the solo and entrepreneurial spaces that are willing to help out other small businesses as well. And if I can at all package those services together, I'm more than happy to do so.
Sounds good. So we're at about 41 minutes. So we have about 9 to 10 more minutes before Emily will do the closing. Do you have anything that you'd like to spill out between your social media, your name again, your phone number, anything that can help
If you would like
people
to,
remember your name, know where to find you, and to maybe make contact with you somehow?
the best way to do that is my LinkedIn. It's my most kept up to date social media. I have a terrible habit of keeping up my clients' social media and their websites and not my own. I'm absolutely guilty of that. But the best way to get in touch with me is my LinkedIn, and that is Autumn Dahlia. And you can search my name and Autumn Dahlia Creative Services, and I will pop right up. It's linkedin.com, and then the username or the URL is actually Autumn Dahlia.
Will you spell out Autumn and Dahlia? Because those sound like what some people may have a hard time, whether it's because of your accent or it's because of just the word Dahlia is
Sure.
hard to know how to spell. So if you can spell all that out and maybe even share it in the chat for viewers to be able to see it written down.
In the chat.
And then listeners, when she says this and you see it on the screen, know that this is actually her tag name. So you have to put the @ symbol, and it's for LinkedIn.
Yes, ma'am. And Autumn is just like the season. And then Dahlia is D as in Delta, A as in Alpha, H as in Hotel, L as in Lima, I as in Indigo, A as in Alpha. Creative, just the word creative, that's C as in Charlie, R as in Romeo, E as in Echo, A as in Alpha, T as in Tango, I as in Indigo, V as in Victor, E as in Echo, and then services. And again, I cover branding and identity services. I cover editorial and marketing collateral. So that's magazines, newsletters, flyers, business cards, anything that you could possibly need to market your business, as well as packaging design. So if you have a product that you need packaging for, I am always up for a challenge of creating new packaging, and it is one of my favorite things to do.
And I hear you saying you're up for the challenge and no task is too hard for them to put on you.
Absolutely. I am always up for a good challenge.
And you're always up for a challenge, right?
Absolutely. I'm the mom of 3 special needs children, so I've had to live creatively, as my good friend Denise would say. And
Exactly.
it's always something different in the house. So I'm willing to think outside of the box and get you the results that you need.
Sounds great. But I hear that in your spill, you announced that you have editorial services. I didn't hear about that, and I never would have personally thought that that was part of a marketing package. I mean, it is for an author, but like just in the general scheme of business, since I had my tutoring company for 10 years before the pandemic caused it to fail. But in that sense, as a business owner, I was in a different industry as my primary livelihood, and authorship was my side gig. But even with all my 20 something years as an entrepreneur, I never would have thought that a digital marketer, web designer, graphic designer, and all these other forms of marketing tactic that you do would actually include editor.
Yes, ma'am. I do copy. I suck at my own copy. I do definitely tailor that out to other people, but I'm extremely creative with words. And if you need someone to help you figure out your I help statement, or what it is that you do and who your target audience is, I have programs to do that. And it's also one of my favorite things to do. So I do offer editorial services as well.
And now I'm going to spill in here my information. Now suddenly I forgot my own phone number. Can you believe that, Sarah?
That all the time.
Well, especially when, like, how I was told you in a different conversation how my business, Jen's Books and More, is a new business that I started since this year in 2022. Well, no, and for people who see this live, this is right now April of 2022. So this business hasn't even been around for a year, and so I had to get a new phone number, and I'm ending up relearning different things because I have a different phone number and different other information.
I think it took me about 4 months, maybe 4 or 5 months, to actually remember my phone number. I think we live in such a digital age now where things are so readily available to us that we're not training ourselves to remember things like that anymore.
And what's this you just shared?
I just put my LinkedIn there for you as well. Just in case we're not connected. I think we are connected on LinkedIn, but just in case, my LinkedIn is there for you as well.
Okay. So for everybody who knows me, I'm Jennifer A. Whitaker, co-host of World of Ability. I lead every 3 Wednesdays. Right now, I am scheduled next to lead, I believe it's May 18th, but I'm going to check the date. Yes, it is correct. I will next be on World of Ability podcast, their Wednesday show on May 18th, 2022. If you want to check out my books or for your own reading, whether it's you want the ebook or you want to follow me and find out news about trade shows where I give out autographs, my podcasts, and other places you can find me, or you can find my books to either meet me, take a selfie, get a copy of the book, or whatever else you may want to do, then you can find my social media. Book Facebook is at Books by Jennifer A. Whitaker, and Whitaker is spelled Whitaker. On Twitter, it's at Jen's Books N, the letter N, More. On LinkedIn, it's Books and the word More by Jennifer A. Whitaker. On Instagram, it's at Jennifer A. Whitaker Books. On YouTube, you can look up Books and More by Jennifer A. Whitaker, and whichever social media you want to find us on, like or subscribe to our channel, follow us. If you want to check out my books, go to Jen's, JENNS, books and the word and more.com. If you would be interested in being hosted on one of my podcasts or being a retailer or reseller of any books, featuring me as a attraction to your business for autographs or any other business aspect, you can call me or text me at 346-439-8393. And you can call or text it. That's my cell phone. But if you're going to call or text, please be respectful of, I do sleep after 9 p.m. Central Time. So please don't call after then. But if you are thinking about it at that time, please wait till the next business day if it's after 9 p.m. Otherwise, you can call or text me at whatever time that's all day long, even in the evening hours if you work a full-time job or something, and maybe you want to resell my books on the side as a side gig, then you can still call or text me after work, only it would be before 9 p.m. Central. Emily, Kurt, are y'all in the room?
I thought they were still here with us.
Yeah, somebody has to be. Emily or Kurt, we do not hear or see you.
Hi, everybody. I'm back. So I just wanted to thank Jennifer and Sarah for being on here today. And for everybody who has tuned in. Is there any last ending things that you want to think of it for our thanks for the activity on all of our social media?
Yes, I want to pay thank you for followers, subscribers, for following us here on World of Ability. But if you would, please share these posts or share the video or anything else, the podcast, anything else is how you see us and find us or hear us. Please share it with your friends, family, whoever, because you never know who that somebody is you know. maybe you haven't talked to in a while, but may want to hear what we were talking about, especially if you know if they're a decision maker, business owner, coach, author, or any of these others that pertain to what we were talking about, that Sarah Goodell's market that she likes to work with, and or would be people that may want to work with myself, Jen Frey Whitaker, at jensbooksandmore.com. And that's my gratitude. And we thank everybody for listening, sharing, subscribing, following, etc. on World of Ability Podcast.
And I guess we're here every Wednesday for Eastern.
Recording stopped.
So for those of you, encourage everybody to come back next week. And I guess until next week, stay healthy and stay happy.
Cheers.